My sister sent the message at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. I remembered the time because I was in the middle of answering emails before my shift, and my phone lit up with the family group chat notification. I almost didn't read it right away. I almost let it sit there like I usually did, checking it later when I had a minute. I wish I had waited. At least then I would have had a few more hours of not knowing. The message was from my sister Priya. She'd added a little announcement emoji at the top, like she was sharing something exciting. Big news, everyone! Derek's parents are flying in from Portland for Thanksgiving this year. Mom and Dad said we can host everyone at the house. It's going to be a full table, so just a heads up, it might be tight for extra guests. We'll figure out seating. So excited. I read it twice. Then I read it twice. Then I read it a third time, slower. Extra guests. I was her brother. My son Eli was her nephew. We had eaten Thanksgiving at that table every single year of our lives. My mother had called me in September, like she did every September, to ask what dish I was bringing. I had already told her I'd handled the sweet potatoes and the green bean casserole, same as always. I had already bought the ingredients. Extra guests. Before I could type anything, my father replied, "Your mother and I think it's a wonderful idea. The more the merrier. We want Derek's family to feel welcome. Family is everything. Family is everything." I set my phone face down on my desk and sat very still for a moment. Outside my window, the oak tree in the front yard had started dropping leaves. Eli had jumped in a pile of them the weekend before, laughing so hard he gave himself hiccups. I'd taken a video, I had sent it to my mother. She had replied with a heart emoji. I picked my phone back up. "Hey, just to confirm, are Eli and I still coming? Want to make sure I bring enough of the casserole if there are more people?" Priya replied in 4 minutes. "Oh, yeah, so here's the thing. Derek's family is pretty large and Mom's dining room only fits so many. We were thinking maybe you and Eli could do your own little thing this year. Like, it could be special, just the two of you. You're so good at making things fun for him." I read that message so many times that the words stopped looking like words. Then my mother replied to the chain. "We thought about it and it really does make more sense. You understand, right? You're always so flexible. We are counting on you to bring the casserole and the sweet potatoes still though. Derek's mother has a dairy allergy, so please check the recipe. Let us know if you need the address for where to drop things off beforehand." Drop things off. Not come in, not sit down, not eat with us. Drop things off. And then my father sent one more message, just 3 words at the end of the chain, like a period at the end of a sentence. "Don't be difficult." I closed the app. I went to work. I smiled at the people I needed to smile at. I answered the questions I needed to answer. On the drive home, I stopped at the grocery store because Eli was out of the cereal he liked, the one with the little stars on the box that he called space cereal. I stood in the cereal aisle for a long time holding the box, not thinking about anything. That night, after Eli went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and thought about what my family had just asked me to do. Eli was 7 years old. He was in 2nd grade. He had his mother's eyes and my terrible habit of leaving cabinet doors open, and he had started doing this thing recently where he grabbed my hand when we walked through parking lots even though I hadn't asked him to, just automatically because he knew it was the safe thing to do. He was the best person I knew. His mother, my wife Cara, had died 3 years ago. A car accident on a Wednesday afternoon, a wet road, a truck that ran a light. Eli had been at school, I'd been at work. We had both been doing ordinary things while the most important person in our lives stopped existing. Her parents had cut off contact within 6 months. I understood it, or tried to. I was a reminder of her. So was Eli. But they handled that differently than I did. My family had filled in, or at least that is what I had told myself for 3 years. My mother called every Sunday. My father watched Eli sometimes on weekends when my shifts ran long. Priya texted occasionally, usually when she needed something, but I hadn't let myself think about it that way. I had also, over those 3 years, done the following things. I paid for my parents' new water heater when theirs broke in February, $1,400 because my father said they were short that month. I had driven my mother to 11 medical appointments because she didn't like driving on the highway. I had built the deck in my parents' backyard over a summer weekend, while Eli sat nearby drawing in his sketchbook, and my father supervised from a lawn chair. I had loaned Priya $2,300 when she and Derek were between apartments and needed first and last month's rent. I had organized my mother's Medicare paperwork for 2 years running because she said it was confusing. I had cooked Christmas dinner for the past 3 years because Priya's kitchen was too small and my parents' oven ran hot, and I was, as my mother always said, the one who was good at that sort of thing. I sat at my kitchen table that night and I got out a notepad. I wrote all of it down, everything I could remember with rough numbers attached. When I finished, I added it up. I looked at the number for a long time. Then I thought about Eli asking me last Thanksgiving, at the kids' table in the corner of the kitchen, "Dad, when do I get to sit at the big table?" And I had said, "Soon, buddy." And I had believed that. I closed the notepad. I went to bed. I closed the notepad. I went to bed. I didn't sleep for a long time. I want to be honest about something. The message from Priya wasn't the first sign. I know that now, and I think somewhere inside me I knew it then. But grief does something to your judgment. When Kara died, I needed my family to be something. And so I looked at what they were giving me, and I decided it was enough. I decided it was love, even when it arrived with conditions attached. Even when the conditions kept shifting. There was the summer Eli was 5, when my parents went to visit Priya in Austin for 10 days and didn't invite us. My mother said the house they were staying at wasn't child-friendly. Eli had been confused for weeks afterward, asking why Grandma and Grandpa went on a trip without him. There was the birthday party where Priya had a cake for herself and a sheet cake in the kitchen for the kids, and Eli had waited at the kids' table the whole evening while adults laughed in the dining room 30 feet away. There was the way my father talked to me versus the way he talked to Derek, even before they were engaged. Like Derek was a guest who needed to be impressed and I was staff who needed to be managed. I had filed all of it away somewhere. I had told myself I was being sensitive. I had brought the casserole. I had fixed the deck. I had driven my mother to her appointments. I had told Eli, "Soon, buddy, soon." 2 days after the group chat message, I called my mother. I told myself I was calling to have a conversation like an adult, to see if there was something I was missing, to give her the chance to explain. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, like nothing had happened. "I wanted to talk about Thanksgiving," I said. "Of course," she said. "Did you look up the casserole recipe? I need to know by Friday if you can make a dairy-free version." I held the phone and counted to 3. "I'm more concerned about whether Eli and I are actually invited," I said. She sighed. It was a specific sigh I had heard my whole life. The one that meant I was creating a problem where there wasn't one. "We've been through this," she said. "Derek's family is large. There isn't room." "It's your house," I said. "You've hosted 30 people at Christmas." "That's different." "How is it different?" "Because this is important to your sister," she said. "She needs this to go well. Derek's mother is very particular, and I don't want anything to be uncomfortable." "What would be uncomfortable about me and my son being there?" She paused. Then she said something I have thought about every day since. "You know how things get sometimes. You can be a lot. I can be a lot." I was the person who had driven her to 11 medical appointments. I was the person who had built their deck. I was the person who had organized 2 years of Medicare paperwork. I was a lot. "Okay," I said. "So, you'll still bring the food?" she said. "Just leave it on the porch. We'll be setting up in the morning." "Around 9 would be great." "I'll let you know," I said. I hung up. That night I did something I had not done in 3 years. I called my friend Marcus, who I had known since college and who had moved to Denver 2 years before and who called me every few months to tell me I should move somewhere with mountains. I told him the whole thing, start to finish, the group chat and the porch drop-off, and you can be a lot. He was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to bring the food?" he said. "I don't know," I said. "What does Eli know about all this?" "Nothing. He just knows we're figuring out Thanksgiving plans. What does he want to do?" I thought about it. Last week, Eli had found a travel video on my laptop, some YouTube thing about national parks, and he had watched 20 minutes of it with complete absorption before looking up at me and saying, "Dad, have you ever seen a real canyon?" I told Marcus that. He said, "So take him to see a real canyon." I didn't say anything for a moment. "My whole family is expecting me to show up with food," I said. "Your whole family uninvited you from Thanksgiving and asked you to use the side entrance," Marcus said. "Those are different things." I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. The next morning I got on my laptop while Eli was eating his space cereal and I looked up Bryce Canyon National Park. I had looked at it once before, years ago. Something Kara had bookmarked and never gotten to. The photographs were extraordinary. Those orange columns of rock standing in rows like they had somewhere important to be. I read about the best time to go. I read about the lodges inside the park. I read about the Junior Ranger program for kids. Ely finished his cereal and came to look over my shoulder. "What's that?" he said. "What do you think it is?" He studied the screen. "Rocks. Really old rocks," I said. "People hike between them. You can walk right through the middle." He leaned closer to the screen. I watched his face. "Can we go?" he said. "I was thinking maybe for Thanksgiving," I said. He looked at me like I had told him Christmas was coming early. Instead of Grandma and Grandpa's, I had not told him about the group chat. He was 7. That was not his weight to carry. "Grandma and Grandpa have a lot of people visiting this year," I said, "so we're going to do our own trip." He considered this with the seriousness that 7-year-olds bring to important decisions. Then he said, "Will there be hot chocolate?" "There will be hot chocolate," I said. "Okay," he said. "I want to go." I booked 2 nights at the lodge inside the park that same morning. I did not book any casserole deliveries. I sat for a while after closing my laptop and I thought about what I was actually deciding. Because it wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about a version of my family that I had been maintaining in my imagination for 3 years. The version where they were doing their best, where the distance was circumstantial, where if I kept showing up and kept contributing and kept being flexible, they would eventually see me and Eli clearly and act accordingly. I had been so sure that version was real. I thought about my notepad with the numbers on it. I got it out and looked at the total again. Then I did something I'd been turning over in my mind since the phone call with my mother. I opened my email. I started a new message to my parents and Priya. I typed carefully. I took my time. I told them I wouldn't be dropping off food on Thanksgiving morning. I told them I had been reviewing what I'd contributed to the family over the past 3 years, financially and otherwise, and that I'd put together a summary for my own clarity. I attached the document I had made the night before. Every item, every amount, every appointment, every repair, every loan. Itemized, dated as best as I could remember, totaled at the bottom. I told them I wasn't asking for repayment. I was simply establishing, from my own records, what had been given. I told them that Eli and I were going to Bryce Canyon for Thanksgiving and that we were looking forward to it. I told them I hoped their holiday would go well. I did not say anything cruel. I did not write anything I would be ashamed of later. I read it over twice and I changed 2 sentences that felt like they were reaching for an argument. Because I didn't want an argument. I just wanted them to know that I knew. Then I sent it. My phone rang 40 minutes later. It was Priya. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I let it go again. My mother called twice. My father sent a text that said, "Call us right now." I made Eli's lunch and helped him find his left shoe, which had ended up under the couch somehow, and I drove him to school. On the way there, he told me about a book his teacher was reading to the class. Something about a raccoon who starts a detective agency. He was very invested in whether the raccoon would solve the case. "Do you think he will?" I asked. "He has to," Eli said, with complete confidence. "He's the main character." I thought about that on the drive home. My father left a voicemail that afternoon that I listened to once. His voice was controlled in the way it got when he was trying to sound calm. He said I was being dramatic. He said no one had done anything wrong. He said the itemized list was inappropriate and that money between family wasn't supposed to be tracked. He said he expected me to apologize to my mother. My mother sent a text that said I had embarrassed her. Priya sent a text that said, and I want to quote this accurately, "This is why you don't have many friends. You make everything about yourself. Derek's family is going to think we're insane because of you." I read that one a few times. Then I put my phone in the kitchen drawer and went to mow the front lawn. There are things no one tells you about the moment you stop pretending. I had expected to feel relieved, or vindicated, or sad. I felt something quieter than any of those, standing in my front yard with the smell of cut grass around me and the late afternoon light coming through the oak tree. I felt like someone had set down a piece of luggage I hadn't noticed I was carrying. I had been holding the shape of a family that didn't quite exist. I had been bending myself around it, filling in the gaps, making excuses for the weight of it, and in the time it took to type that email and press send, I'd set it down. It didn't disappear. It just stopped being mine to carry. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Not that day, not the day after. My mother called 3 more times over the following week. My father sent 2 more texts. Priya went quiet, which was its own kind of answer. I did not deliver the casserole. I did not apologize to my mother. The week before Thanksgiving, Eli and I packed 2 bags and drove to the airport. He wore his backpack with the patches on it. The one he decorated himself with iron-on planets and a large, somewhat crooked rocket ship. He was very serious about managing his own carry-on. He had packed 3 books, a drawing pad, 2 decks of cards, and a bag of those fish-shaped crackers that I had long ago stopped trying to limit. On the plane, he fell asleep against my shoulder somewhere over Nevada. I looked out the window at the dark land below and thought about the Thanksgiving I had spent 3 years ago, 5 weeks after Kara died, sitting at my parents' table eating food I had made, holding it together for Eli, and feeling grateful that my family was there. I had needed them to be something then. I had made them into it by sheer will. I think I had been doing that ever since. Bryce Canyon in late November is a different world. The tourists are thin and the air is cold, and everything that isn't red rock is white with the first snow. We checked into the lodge and Eli immediately pressed his face against the window of our room to look at the trees. "Dad," he said, "there's a squirrel." "A real one?" I said. He turned around and looked at me like I was very silly. "They're always real, Dad." We hiked the rim trail the first morning, Eli in his blue jacket and his hat with the bare ears, stopping every several minutes to look at something, a bird, a shadow on the rock face, a formation that he decided looked like a sleeping giant. He had questions about everything. Why did the rocks turn that color? How long did it take? Did anyone live inside the canyon? I answered what I could and made up plausible-sounding answers for the rest. He earned his junior ranger badge that afternoon. Park ranger with a gray braid swore him in very officially, and Eli stood as straight as I had ever seen him stand, hand raised, taking the oath with an expression of profound gravity. I took a picture. I thought about sending it to my mother. I didn't. That evening we sat on the lodge porch in the cold with hot chocolate and watched the sky go dark over the canyon rim. The stars came out thick and bright the way they only do when you're far enough from everything else. Eli leaned against me. "Dad," he said. "Yeah, bud, this is better than Grandma and Grandpa's." I thought about how to answer that. I thought about what it would mean to him in 10 years, 20 years, the story of the Thanksgiving he became a junior ranger and saw the canyon full of stars. I thought about what it would mean versus the story of the Thanksgiving he sat at the kids' table and waited. "I think so too," I said. He nodded, satisfied, like we had agreed on something important. "Are we going to come back?" he said. "We can come back whenever you want," I said. He thought about it. "Maybe summer," he said. "I want to see what the rocks look like when it's not cold." "Teal," I said. He fell asleep in the chair and I carried him inside. This boy who grabbed my hand in parking lots, who believed in raccoon detectives, who had never once asked me to be someone other than who I was. When I got back to the porch, I sat alone for a while in the dark with my coffee. My phone was in my jacket pocket. I had turned the notifications off 2 days earlier, not out of anger, just out of a desire to be where I was. I thought about my family sitting around my mother's table. I thought about Derek's mother with her dairy allergy. I thought about the sweet potatoes no one had made and the casserole no one had brought. I didn't feel angry about it. I had moved through the anger in the days after the email and out the other side into something more like clarity. They would call it dramatic. They would call it an overreaction. They would tell the story to Derek's family about how I had sent an itemized list like a bill, and Derek's family would cluck their tongues and say how sad, what a difficult person. My father would call it a phase. My mother would call it a phase. My mother would say she didn't know where she went wrong. None of that was mine to manage anymore. I had one job now. I had always had one job, I just hadn't always let myself see it. I went inside and looked at my son sleeping in the center of the big lodge bed, his junior ranger badge on the nightstand next to him, his face completely unguarded the way kids' faces are when they sleep. I pulled the blanket up around him. He didn't stir. Outside, the canyon was full of dark and cold and a billion years of rock that had held its shape through every season that had come. I turned off the light. Back home, I settled into something new. Not empty, not defiant, just different. I called Marcus and told him about the trip. He said he told me so about the mountains. I told him canyons were different from mountains, and he said canyon mountains. Close enough. My parents sent a Christmas card in December. It had a photo of the whole family from Thanksgiving. My parents and Priya and Derek and Derek's parents, all standing in front of my mother's fireplace looking warm and assembled. There was no note inside, just their names signed at the bottom in my mother's handwriting. I put it on the counter. I looked at it for a day. Then I moved it to a drawer. Eli made his own Christmas cards that year with his art supplies, cutting and painting and writing his name in careful letters inside each one. He made one for Marcus. He made one for his teacher. He made one for the woman next door who let him pet her golden retriever. He asked me who he should make one for from our family. I thought about it. Who do you want to make one for? I said. He considered this very seriously. Just us, he said. Can I make one for just us? You can make whatever you want, I said. He made a card for the two of us. On the front, he drew a rocket ship and a canyon and a squirrel and wrote, "Happy Everything" in red marker. I kept it on the refrigerator for the rest of the year. There is something I've understood slowly in the months since that Thanksgiving. Family is not a group of people you share biology with. Family is a practice. It is the accumulation of small acts, the hand-holding in parking lots, the space cereal, the questions about canyon rocks, the cards made with red marker. It is showing up for someone not because you need something from them, but because their presence in the world matters to you and you want them to know it. I had been practicing that with the wrong people for a long time, not because they were terrible. They were ordinary, flawed, self-interested in the ways that most people are. But I had been bringing everything I had and calling the exchange equal, and it wasn't, and somewhere deep down I had always known it. Eli and I are going back to Bryce Canyon in July. I already booked it. He wants to hike down into the canyon this time, into the middle of the hoodoos, walk between the rocks. I read that if you go early enough in the morning, before the trail gets busy, it is almost silent in there. Just the sound of your own footsteps and the wind moving through the columns. I think he's going to love it. I think I am too. There is a version of this story where I stay quiet, where I load the casserole and the sweet potatoes into my car on Thanksgiving morning, drive to my parents' house, leave the food on the porch, and drive home, where I tell Eli we're having a small holiday this year. Just us, without explaining why. Where I spend the afternoon watching him play and trying not to think about the table I wasn't allowed to sit at. I almost lived that version. For 3 years, I'd been living something close to it. What I understand now is that what happened to me wasn't sudden. It was a slow accumulation. The kind that happens so gradually you don't notice the weight until you try to stand up straight and can't. Every time I absorbed an exclusion without saying anything, every time I filled a gap that wasn't mine to fill, every time I showed up with my hands full and was thanked with another request, I was teaching the people around me exactly how I expected to be treated. Not because I deserved it, but because I kept accepting it. That is the hard part to sit with. Not what they did, but what I allowed. The choices I made, year after year, to keep the peace at the cost of my own dignity. I told myself it was love. Sometimes it was, but a lot of it was fear. Fear of being difficult, fear of being the one who caused the problem, fear of losing something that, if I'm honest, had already been lost. When I sent that email with the itemized list, I wasn't asking for money. I was doing something I had never done before in my adult life. I was stating clearly, in writing, that I had seen what had been happening, and that I was no longer going to pretend otherwise. That one act of clarity, not cruelty, not revenge, just honesty, changed the entire dynamic. Not because it changed them. It didn't. It changed me. Eli will grow up knowing that his father made a choice. That when the people who were supposed to show up for us decided we weren't worth a seat at the table, we didn't beg for one. We went and found a better table. We went and stood inside a canyon older than anything any of us will ever understand. And we looked up at the stars and we decided that was enough. That we were enough. The intelligence I am most grateful for is not the kind that earns money or solves problems. It is the kind that eventually recognizes the difference between love and obligation, between family and habit, between staying because something is good and staying because leaving feels too hard. That recognition doesn't come easily. It usually arrives after a long time of looking away from something you already know. Eli grabbed my hand in the parking lot at the airport without thinking about it. He didn't weigh it or calculate it. He just did it because it was the right thing, the safe thing, the obvious thing. 7 years old and already wiser than I had been for most of my 30s. I think that is what I want to carry forward. Not the bitterness of what was withheld, but the clarity of what was shown to me by a boy with a junior ranger badge and a card that said happy everything in red marker. That is the family I am building. One honest act at a time.